Marcus wouldn't yell at you. He'd say this. You wake up late, you scroll, you sigh, you say you're overwhelmed, then scroll again. You call it burnout. You call it overstimulation. You call it just how life is. But Marcus wouldn't call it that. He'd watch in silence. He wouldn't yell. He wouldn't shame you. He'd just say, "You've forgotten what you can command. You let your mood lead your decisions. You let opinions shape your direction. You let emotion run your day," and call it authenticity. But Marcus would call it slavery. Not political, not physical, mental. Because the Stoic didn't ask, "How do you feel today?" He asked, "Who's in command?" You scroll to escape discomfort. He sat with his demons and wrote through them. You seek permission to move. He trained to move without emotion's approval. You think strength is about power. He knew strength was about not collapsing when the inside shakes. And no, he wouldn't call you weak. He'd call you untrained. And then he'd hand you the first tool: discipline over impulse, command over chaos, responsibility over reaction. You want motivation. Marcus would give you structure and tell you to build yourself from the inside or be broken from the outside. This isn't the age of freedom. It's the age of internal disorder. You think this is the freest time in history. No emperors, no wars, no cages. But you're not free. You're just surrounded by options and ruled by impulses. You scroll, not because you choose to, but because your system can't sit still. You check every message not because it matters, but because your mind demands stimulation like a drug. You call that freedom. Marcus would call it disorder. He believed freedom wasn't about doing what you want. It was about doing what's required, especially when you don't want to. Discipline over comfort. Principle over preference. That's what he trained for. Every day. While leading an empire. While burying his children. While preparing for betrayal from the very people he fed. He didn't chase happiness. He didn't chase ease. He chased readiness. Because when your emotions run untrained, you're not deciding. You're reacting. And when you live in constant reaction, you're no longer a person. You're a puppet. Marcus didn't fear pain. He feared not being mentally prepared for it. He didn't avoid adversity. He studied it, so it wouldn't shake his center when it arrived. You're not broken. You're just conditioned to confuse freedom with indulgence. You think because you can do anything, you're in control. But Marcus would ask, what have you done today that required you to override yourself? And if the answer is nothing, he'd call that weakness. Not to shame you, but to wake you. Because until you regain authority over your own system, every choice is borrowed. Every outcome is outsourced. And that's not liberation. It's just dressed up dependence. Signs you're living opposite of a Stoic. If Marcus asked, what have you conquered today in yourself? What would you say? Because modern weakness doesn't look like collapse. It looks like micro-compromises you no longer notice. And here's how they show up. 1. You let a comment ruin your mood for the entire day. One message, one tone, one misinterpretation, and you spiral. You're not controlling emotion, you're being steered by it. A Stoic would pause, observe, then ask, is this within my control? You didn't ask, you just reacted. 2. You change your values based on emotional weather. You commit to discipline until it feels inconvenient. You set a boundary until it creates discomfort. You say, this matters, until the mood changes. That's not flexibility. That's identity erosion. Marcus wouldn't call that weakness. He'd call it untested philosophy. 3. You act based on how you feel, not based on what you've chosen. Feel tired? Delay. Feel offended? Lash out. Feel anxious? Quit. But feeling something was never supposed to be a green light. A Stoic doesn't ignore feelings. He just doesn't obey them. 4. You seek comfort as a reflex, not as a reward. Any tension? You soothe it. Any silence? You fill it. Any boredom? You scroll it away. But Marcus didn't train for comfort. He trained for chaos. Not because he loved pain, but because he knew. The man who needs comfort to operate isn't built for life. These aren't just habits. They're signals. Proof that the system is being run by emotion, not design. But the fact you're seeing them now means you've exited auto mode. And that's exactly where the reset begins. Marcus didn't inspire. He rewired. You think philosophy is about feeling better? Stoicism never was. It wasn't a motivational quote. It wasn't a morning affirmation. It wasn't about positive vibes. It was code, mental architecture. And Marcus wasn't trying to inspire himself. He was trying to interrupt the loop. He didn't write, "You're strong." He wrote, "If it's endurable, then endure it. If it's not, then stop complaining." He didn't say, "You've been through worse." He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you'll find strength." This wasn't poetry. It was programming. Marcus knew that emotion speaks first, but philosophy must speak last. Not to suppress the feeling, but to override it. With structure, with clarity, with command. You feel rejected? He'd write, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculation about others." You feel lost? He'd remind you, "Nowhere you can go can give you more peace than your own mind." Trained right. Every sentence in Meditations was written as a correction, not for the world, for himself, not to sound wise, but to stay stable. And that's what we've forgotten. We seek inspiration when what we need is reinstallation. We collect quotes, but ignore the system they were meant to build. Marcus didn't write to impress. He wrote to protect his inner command center from the noise of an unstable world. And if you're serious about clarity, you'll stop saving quotes and start running them like operating code. That's when Stoicism stops sounding pretty and starts saving your mind. Case study: a modern mind, trained like Marcus. You won't spot them in a crowd. They're not loud, not always dressed in power, not quoting Stoicism on social media, but you'll feel something shift when you're around them. Because their nervous system doesn't flinch. You criticize them. They don't defend. You delay on purpose. They don't chase. You push them emotionally. They don't escalate. You test them with silence, attention, approval. Nothing changes their baseline. Why? Because they don't need you to stabilize their system. They trained it themselves. When conflict happens, they don't collapse into emotion. They shift into position. Observation mode, Marcus mode. They don't fear being misread. They fear losing internal command. That's the difference. They don't react to be seen as right. They respond to stay in alignment. And no, they're not cold. They just don't leak. Not energy, not fear, not insecurity. They understand what Marcus wrote. You have power over your mind, not outside events. They took that seriously, and now they carry it like armor. In how they speak, move, and think. These people exist. And no, they don't look like warriors. They look like quiet systems that don't need validation to stay rooted. You don't need to admire them. You just need to ask, what would change in my life if I trained my mind the way they did? Because Stoicism isn't aesthetic, it's software, and it only runs on systems that stop running from discomfort. The Stoic Reset. 3 lines Marcus would tell you today. If Marcus Aurelius could speak to you now, he wouldn't talk long. He wouldn't speak softly. And he wouldn't ask how you feel. He'd say 3 things. Short, sharp, non-negotiable. Each one a reset command to stop the spiraling and bring you back to center. 1. You don't control what happens. You only control how ready you are to meet it. You can't stop the market from crashing. You can't stop people from disappointing you. You can't stop time, but you can train. Daily, silently, relentlessly. Marcus would say, stop rehearsing outcomes. Start rehearsing your readiness. Because life doesn't reward panic, it rewards preparation. 2. Comfort is not the reward. Mastery is. You think peace is found in ease. But Marcus would argue, the calm you're chasing is a byproduct of knowing you don't need things to go your way. Mastery equals neutrality under pressure. Mastery, not being thrown by what throws others. The Stoic isn't safe because the world is calm. He's safe because his system doesn't depend on it. 3. If your emotions lead, your fate is borrowed. Every time you act from impulse, you just outsourced your future to your current mood. And Marcus would ask, are you okay with a fate chosen by your feelings? Because reaction builds patterns, and patterns build destiny. These aren't quotes, they're operating principles, commands for anyone tired of being owned by emotion and ready to run their mind like a Stoic with something to protect. Which, by the way, you are. Marcus wouldn't want you strong. He'd want you trained. Marcus wouldn't tell you to be fearless. He wouldn't tell you to be bold. He wouldn't ask you to be impressive. He'd ask one thing. Are you trained? Because strength is unreliable without system, and resilience is noise without structure. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to stop relying on the world to calm you down. You don't need better conditions. You need better control over your own internal conditions. That's what Marcus wrote for. Not to motivate, but to engineer the mind under pressure. Modern weakness isn't fragility. It's a mind that can't sit still without a screen. It's a will that bends at every mood swing. It's a nervous system that expects the world to stop triggering it. But Marcus wouldn't shame you for that. He'd just hand you the book, the page, the sentence, and say, read this until it becomes your first response. In the next video, we'll break down how modern comfort culture is slowly erasing your ability to think clearly and hold pressure. Subscribe, reclaim your mind, and start training it like Marcus would.